My elderly aunt has been faking dementia for 2 years to avoid paying back the $300,000 she borrowed from family members. The first crack in Aunt Gloria's carefully constructed facade happened during what should have been a routine visit to Sunny Meadows Assisted Living. I was dropping off her favorite butterscotch candies when I noticed her struggling with the keypad lock on her room door. She stood there, confusion written across her face, repeatedly pressing random numbers while muttering about forgetting her code again. Classic Gloria behavior for the past 2 years since her dementia diagnosis. But then her phone rang. Without missing a beat, she answered and immediately started rattling off a complex 15-digit account number to whoever was on the other end, speaking in clear, precise English about transferring funds between investment portfolios. The transformation was so jarring that I literally stepped back into the hallway, pressing myself against the wall to avoid being seen. When the call ended, Gloria returned to fumbling with the keypad, that same confused expression painted back on her face. She eventually gave up and shuffled toward the nurse's station, moving with the hesitant gait I'd become accustomed to over the past 24 months. But I'd heard what I'd heard. That wasn't the voice of someone with cognitive decline. That was the sharp, business-focused aunt who'd built a real estate empire in Phoenix before her supposed illness began. Standing there in the sterile hallway, surrounded by the smell of disinfectant and the distant sounds of afternoon activities, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This was the same woman who couldn't remember my name half the time, who needed help operating the TV remote, who'd supposedly lost the ability to manage her own finances. Yet she'd just recited a complex account number with the precision of someone who dealt with financial transactions daily. The timing was too convenient, too perfect. Gloria's symptoms had emerged right around the time our family started asking serious questions about the money she'd borrowed. $300,000 spread across parents, uncles, cousins, and even my 82-year-old grandmother. Money that was supposed to fund revolutionary investment opportunities that would secure everyone's retirement. Money that had simply vanished along with Gloria's mental clarity. I stood there for another 10 minutes, watching through the small window as Gloria interacted with nursing staff. With them, she was the picture of elderly confusion, asking where she was, seeming startled by familiar faces moving slowly and deliberately. But something in her eyes seemed too alert, too aware, like an actress who'd been playing the same role for so long that the performance had become second nature. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I'd believed about Gloria's condition might be an elaborate lie. The phone call kept replaying in my mind. The confidence in her voice, the way she'd switched between personas so seamlessly. If she was faking, it meant our entire family had been manipulated by someone we'd trusted completely. Someone who'd exploited our love and sympathy to escape the consequences of what was starting to look like systematic theft. Update. I keep second-guessing what I heard, but that account number she recited was 16 digits long. People with dementia don't memorize banking information that complex. I'm going back tomorrow to observe more carefully. Am I crazy for even suspecting this? To understand how Gloria pulled this off, you have to know who she was before the diagnosis. For 30 years, she'd been the family's financial success story. While my parents struggled with blue-collar jobs in Tucson and my Uncle Dave worked construction, Gloria built a real estate empire that made her genuinely wealthy. She owned rental properties across Phoenix, flipped houses in Scottsdale, and seemed to have an instinct for timing the market perfectly. So when she started approaching family members with investment opportunities 3 years ago, we listened. These weren't get-rich-quick schemes or pyramid marketing pitches. Gloria presented detailed business proposals with professional documentation, showing us commercial developments in Austin, rental property portfolios in Denver, and tech startup investments in California. She'd done the research, vetted the opportunities, and was offering to let family members buy into deals that were supposedly too exclusive for ordinary investors. My parents borrowed $50,000 against their house, because Gloria convinced them this was their chance to finally build real retirement security. Uncle Dave and his wife scraped together $75,000 from their savings and a second mortgage, believing they were investing in their daughter's college fund. Even my grandmother contributed $15,000 from her emergency fund, money she'd saved over decades of living on Social Security. The pitch was always the same. Gloria would handle everything. She'd manage the investments, deal with the paperwork, monitor the returns, and send us quarterly updates. All we had to do was trust her expertise and wait for the profits to roll in. For the first year, everything seemed legitimate. She'd send detailed reports about construction progress, share photos from site visits, and even distribute small payments that she claimed were early returns on our investments. But as the second year progressed, communication became sporadic. Updates turned vague, payments stopped arriving, and Gloria's explanations became increasingly complex. She'd blame delays on permitting issues, market fluctuations, or legal complications that required additional time to resolve. When pressed for specifics, she'd get defensive, reminding us that real estate development was complicated and that questioning her expertise showed a lack of trust. That's when the memory problems supposedly began. It started subtly. Gloria would forget details from previous conversations or repeat information she'd already shared. During family gatherings, she'd seem confused about which grandchild belonged to whom, or she'd ask the same questions multiple times within the same evening. My mother, who'd worked as a nurse's aide for 20 years, started expressing concern about Gloria's cognitive health. The official diagnosis came from Dr. Martinez at Phoenix Neurological Associates. Early-stage dementia, possibly Alzheimer's, requiring immediate lifestyle changes and long-term care planning. Gloria's real estate license was suspended due to her condition, her house was sold to pay for assisted living costs, and suddenly, the conversation about loan repayments became impossible to continue. How could we demand money from someone who couldn't remember borrowing it? After the phone call incident, I started paying closer attention to Gloria's behavior during my visits. What I discovered over the next month was a pattern of inconsistencies that became impossible to ignore. During official visiting hours, when staff and other residents were around, Gloria played her role perfectly. She'd shuffle slowly, speak hesitantly, and ask repetitive questions about basic information that she should have known. But during quieter moments, when the hallways were empty and nurses were busy elsewhere, I caught glimpses of something different. I'd see her moving with purpose toward the facility's business center, where residents could access computers and phones. Through the glass partition, I watched her navigate complex websites with the confidence of someone entirely comfortable with technology. She'd type quickly, scroll through multiple pages, and take handwritten notes in the kind of neat, organized script that required full cognitive function. The breakthrough came when I enlisted my cousin Sarah's help. Sarah worked as an IT specialist for a Phoenix bank, and she'd always been skeptical about financial investments that seemed too good to be true. When I shared my suspicions about Gloria's condition, Sarah offered to help investigate our aunt's financial situation through legitimate channels. What Sarah discovered was devastating. Instead of the depleted assets we'd been told about after Gloria's house sale, our aunt was actively managing multiple investment accounts worth over $400,000. The money wasn't sitting idle either. She was making regular international wire transfers, purchasing foreign real estate through shell corporations, and systematically moving assets beyond the reach of U.S. creditors. Even more damning was Sarah's discovery of recent financial activity that directly contradicted Gloria's supposed cognitive decline. She'd opened new bank accounts within the past 6 months, established business relationships with Costa Rican financial institutions, and purchased property through a Panamanian corporation that had been created just weeks after her dementia diagnosis. This wasn't the random spending of someone with impaired judgment. This was the methodical asset protection strategy of someone planning a sophisticated financial escape. The smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Maria, one of the newer nursing assistants at Sunny Meadows, approached me during a visit with information that made my blood run cold. Maria was originally from Costa Rica, and she'd overheard Gloria speaking fluent Spanish during what was supposed to be a period of confusion and disorientation. Not just basic phrases, but complex conversations about property transfers, residency requirements, and banking procedures. According to Maria, Gloria had even asked her detailed questions about the best neighborhoods in San Jose, the cost of living for American retirees, and the process for establishing permanent residency. These weren't the wandering thoughts of someone with dementia. They were the practical inquiries of someone planning a permanent relocation. Maria had kept quiet because she needed her job, but watching our family struggle with the financial aftermath of Gloria's supposed illness had finally prompted her to speak up. Armed with this information, I decided to conduct a more systematic investigation. I started visiting during different times of day, observing Gloria's interactions with various staff members and residents. The pattern became undeniable. With younger staff members who spoke Spanish, Gloria would occasionally slip into that language, speaking with the fluency of someone who'd been studying intensively. With the facility's financial counselor, she'd ask detailed questions about asset protection and estate planning that demonstrated sophisticated financial knowledge. The most shocking discovery came when I followed up on Maria's tip about overheard phone conversations. During one of my visits, I pretended to take a call in the hallway while positioning myself where I could hear Gloria talking in her room. She was speaking to someone she called Carlos, discussing real estate closing procedures, international banking regulations, and timeline adjustments for what she described as her retirement relocation plan. Her voice was clear, confident, and completely lucid. She rattled off complex financial details, referenced legal documents by number, and demonstrated perfect recall of conversations from weeks earlier. This wasn't a woman struggling with memory loss. This was someone executing a carefully planned strategy to steal from her own family while using a fake medical condition as legal and emotional protection. When I confronted Gloria with this evidence, her mask slipped entirely. The confused, fragile elderly woman disappeared, replaced by someone calculating and cold. She didn't deny the accusations or attempt to maintain her charade. Instead, she calmly explained that our family had never truly appreciated her financial expertise or compensated her fairly for years of free advice and family support. The loans weren't debts to be repaid, they were delayed payment for services rendered. The dementia diagnosis was simply a strategic business decision, a way to restructure her obligations while preserving her assets for a comfortable retirement. Confronting the family with evidence of Gloria's deception was one of the most difficult conversations I'd ever initiated. I gathered everyone in my parents' living room, the same place where Gloria had first pitched her investment opportunities 3 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone as I laid out bank statements, medical inconsistencies, and witness testimonies that painted a picture of systematic fraud. My Uncle Dave broke down completely. His wife's medical treatments had been delayed because they'd invested their healthcare fund, believing they were securing their financial future. My parents sat in stunned silence, processing the fact that they'd refinanced their home to fund what was essentially an elaborate theft. Even my grandmother, now 84 and struggling with her own legitimate health issues, had been robbed by the niece she'd trusted most. The legal process proved more complex than we'd anticipated. Detective Lisa Rodriguez from the Phoenix Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit explained that proving intentional fraud would require demonstrating that Gloria had deliberately misrepresented her medical condition. While we had evidence of her cognitive abilities and financial activities, her medical records still showed an official dementia diagnosis from a licensed physician. Dr. Martinez initially stood by his assessment, claiming that dementia symptoms could fluctuate and that some patients retained certain cognitive abilities while losing others. However, when presented with evidence of Gloria's recent financial sophistication and Spanish fluency, he agreed to conduct a comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation. The results were definitive. Gloria showed no signs of cognitive impairment, memory loss, or neurological decline consistent with any form of dementia. The arrest happened quietly at Sunny Meadows on a Tuesday afternoon. Gloria initially tried to maintain her confused persona when the officers arrived, claiming she didn't understand why they were there or what they wanted from her. But when Detective Rodriguez began reading the charges, wire fraud, elder abuse, and theft by deception, Gloria's facade crumbled. She requested a lawyer and began negotiating potential plea arrangements with the same sharp business acumen that had made her real estate career successful. The financial recovery process proved more challenging than the criminal prosecution. While authorities froze her domestic accounts and seized the Arizona property she'd purchased with stolen funds, much of the money had already been transferred offshore. The international legal process for asset recovery could take years and might only return a fraction of what our family had lost. Gloria's Costa Rican property purchases were protected by foreign corporation structures that made seizure extremely difficult. More devastating than the financial impact was the emotional aftermath. Trust between family members had been shattered, not just by Gloria's actions, but by our collective vulnerability to manipulation. We'd been so focused on supporting what we believed was a sick family member that we'd ignored obvious warning signs and failed to ask basic questions about her treatment or condition. The plea agreement ultimately resulted in a 5-year federal sentence for wire fraud, with restitution orders that would follow Gloria for the remainder of her life. She'd be eligible for parole in 3 years, but the conditions required her to remain in the United States and surrender any assets that could be traced to the original theft. The judge noted that her exploitation of family trust and fake medical condition warranted the maximum sentence allowed under federal guidelines. 2 years later, our family continues rebuilding from Gloria's betrayal, but we've emerged stronger and more unified than before. The criminal case provided some measure of justice, though the financial recovery remains ongoing. Through asset seizures and insurance claims, we've recovered approximately 40% of the stolen money, enough to prevent my parents' foreclosure and help Uncle Dave stabilize his situation, but not enough to fully restore everyone's losses. My grandmother's situation required the most family support. At her age and with her fixed income, recovering from a $15,000 loss proved impossible without help. The family collectively decided to establish a support fund that ensures her remaining years are comfortable and secure. Sometimes healing means acknowledging that justice isn't just about punishment, but about taking care of each other when systems fail. The experience fundamentally changed how our family approaches financial decisions and medical information. We've established protocols that require independent verification for any significant financial requests and second opinions for major medical diagnoses. These safeguards won't prevent all future deception, but they create accountability structures that make elaborate fraud much more difficult to execute. Gloria occasionally sends letters from federal prison, attempting to justify her actions or minimize their impact on our lives. Most family members don't read them. Healing sometimes requires accepting that certain relationships can't be repaired, that some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. Our family circle is smaller now, but it's built on genuine trust and mutual support rather than obligation and manipulation. The most unexpected outcome has been the strengthening of relationships that survived Gloria's deception. My cousin Sarah and I work together now, having started a financial consulting practice that helps families avoid investment fraud. Uncle Dave and my father, who'd barely spoken for years before Gloria's schemes brought them together, now have weekly coffee meetings where they share their recovery progress and support each other's goals. Update: got word that Gloria's parole hearing is next month. The victim impact statements from our family will be part of the process. After everything we've been through, I'm not sure how I feel about her potentially getting out early. Should victims have more say in parole decisions for financial crimes like this?